Our Highline Voices, 106.5 KQWZ LP FM. Connecting Highline and our region. Share your story. Our Highline Voices, history, cultural heritage, art, performances, contemporary, pop culture. We are very motivated to provide a vibrant community museum and authentic social gathering place. It truly takes a village to raise a museum. Despite the challenges, our daily inspiration is our eagerness to build a stronger and more connected community. This museum is from the community to the community. Our passion is for our visitors to have access to a broad spectrum of information sources and cultural perspectives. Our Highline Voices.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nancy. I'm the director of the Highline Heritage Museum, and welcome back. Thank you so much for coming today and joining us for this wonderful dialogue and just talk with a very special person. I know Freya for a very long time now. I respect her, admire her. She's amazing. And I hope that you get to see a glimpse of her through this interview. So I'm going to let Freya introduce herself and the institution that she's representing, and then we will take it from there.
Right. Thanks, Nancy. This is really exciting to get to do something together. You know, normally we're talking about what we're doing at our respective museums, and this is a change of pace. So thank you so much for the invitation. So my name is Freya Liggett, and I am the curator of history and Campbell House at the Northwest Museum of Arts and Culture, and that's in Spokane. So the museum is actually rooted by Campbell House. That's our 1898 historic home in the Browns Addition neighborhood in Spokane, to give you a little context of where I'm sitting right now.
No, that's a beautiful place too. You hosted the Washington Museum Association conference not too long ago. Yeah, it was wonderful to have a lot of us over there, and it just showing respect of the work that you guys do there. So this is great. And so we are going to be talking a little bit about just the experience engaging with the paranormal in a historic context. And so you already provided a little information on the museum, but if you want to talk a little bit more about what type of work you do at the museum briefly, and then from there, like, okay, where is your experience engaging with the paranormal? Mm-hmm. And then don't be surprised if I ask you a couple questions based on the information that you provide. But yeah, so just go for it.
Great. So yeah, like I was mentioning, the historic house is part of the whole campus here at the Northwest Museum. So we do have our main galleries and another building, but overall, we have this really interesting neighborhood history, of course, centered on the historic house itself. And I would say over the past decade or so, interest in the paranormal has just really come to our attention, especially through visitors and folks who are contacting us wanting to know more about that one of the number one questions we get is the house haunted? Are there ghosts? And this really, I think, started this whole engagement on our end to learn more about what the paranormal might look like in a historical context.
What is paranormal? That's one of the questions that we have to. Maybe we can do that in the end of defining what paranormal is and how people might interpret that term. Yeah. And so within the historic context and the work that you did, what are the lessons learned? I mean, how do you engage with the public? How do you engage in following best practice in museums while addressing that paranormal is part of a pop culture, is part of history as well, and the project that you develop to connect in all of those elements together?
I think, as far as lessons learned, and I think the thing that we'll just probably return to over the course of this conversation is going to be looking at other people and places who are doing this type of work well, and finding ways to engage with, what you would consider the paranormal in historical contexts. So like I mentioned, we do get that question very frequently, visitors to the house and folks who are interested in doing paranormal investigations of the home. And first things first, we really had to find out, what does that mean? What does it mean to investigate the paranormal? And we just happened to be lucky enough to have a volunteer at Campbell House with several years of experience working with us, but also an interest in sitting on the local historic preservation commission, and happens to be this is Amanda Paulson, happens to be a paranormal investigator in her own right too, on her own time. So we really were able to learn directly from somebody who was working in that area and had that as an interest. So didn't have to go completely alone into our first foray into the paranormal.
Yeah, I think it was last summer. My memory's really bad. I think it was last summer when you and your team gave a presentation about this. And that's what, like, oh my goodness, I do need to learn more about what you guys are doing. And it came from that talk that you provided during the conference. And so I guess one of the lessons learned that I'm curious about is, yes, you have a volunteer that walk with you through the process of going through those levels of, pop culture and while addressing the issue of making sure that information is accurate, making sure that what you are presenting is the right version and the proper version of things, and then actually be more accurate to the history of the house that you provided this project on. And there's some elements that might be open to interpretation, like I'll talk a little bit more about the project that we're working on tonight. That is open to interpretation. And then when do we let go and let's say, okay, it is up to you to decide whether or not this is true or not. But as an institution, when actually having a staff, and I know that you started this during COVID, and so that was also a complete different time frame would allow you to stop and then really explore this. I know that I should not be saying this, but that's one of the benefits about COVID. It was like a reset button in so many different levels. It allows you to slow down, think, catch your breath, and see things from a little bit from different perspective. It's not that you went on vacation. It's not like, oh, I'll come back in a week. No, it was like, what's happening? Where is the direction? What's going on? Is what is the value of the work that I do? And so in that space allows a lot of the creative entities to be pushing forward to what else can we do that is different. So I know that you came up with this project. You want to talk a little bit about that project?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I think this is one of my favorite aspects of how this project started, was that this was a COVID era 2020 project. And the initial conversation between myself and Amanda was, it took place over Zoom, and she's sitting in her car during kind of her lunch hour, and I'm sitting at my kitchen table working from home during the shutdown. And we really just had this very, very candid conversation. She was leading me into the world of paranormal investigation, what was happening in Spokane, what the interests were around Campbell House. And we also speculated about, look at all of the loss and death, and focus on mortality that we're right in the middle of. And what is that going to mean for the next couple of years? It's very likely that these types of stories, looking at kind of that universal, shared morality as being this really universal, mortality being this really universal concept, and thinking that that's going to make this type of programming very, I think very interesting for people, not just from the historical perspective, but also from that, looking at your own mortality. Mm-hmm. And just seeing the connections between that. So we felt like it was, of any of the times, this was the time to kind of take that leap of faith and say, yes, we're going to learn more. We're going to engage with paranormal, and just take some baby steps. I think the big part of that was not being afraid to engage with the topic, and I think you can see through some of our early marketing videos, we really didn't have a solid grasp on what we wanted to do as far as public programming. I'd say that actually developed as we were doing it. We're bringing people into the home, into the historic house to have these, dialogue-based tours centered around American spiritualism and death and dying. And so we were really learning as we went. This was not, I would say, a thesis-based, fully formed program that we rolled out as soon as we reopened. So, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that 2020 connection for sure.
No, and so this was a tour that you guys provided, and then it was very specific topics that you were addressing. I'll go back there in a second, but one thing that I'm learning in this field is that, like yesterday, I was talking to this artist, and the whole idea, you come up with a design, this is what I'm going to do, I'll create this and this and that, and then the end product is completely different, because a lot of that creative process is adjusting and seeing what is organically fitting into what is it that you want to try to do and what you're trying to do. And even if it's a public program, I don't think I've done a program that is, okay, this is exactly how it's going to look and end, and not adjust it one way or another in the end. And so I'm glad that this allowed the space for to experiment, to try and to explore this type of topics, because there's no, as a cultural institutions, we don't really do much of that work. We don't really tap into that. And that's one of the reasons why it got my attention so much of the presentation that you provided. But going back to make sure that it's clear to the audience, I know what we're talking about, but I want to make sure that it's clear. In one paragraph, can you define what the project that you work and that you develop in your museum was about?
Yeah, absolutely. So the program that came out of this conversation about the paranormal was the museum's Dark History program. It started in 2022. And it was I mentioned it was a dialogue-based tour within our historic house. And it was based on stations, so that visitors would self-select which stations they wanted to start at. They'd have a couple of minutes to talk with the tour guide who'd be in one of those areas, and each had a specific topic that they were covering. And we were also bringing in objects from our historic collection that might not otherwise be seen. We had things that related to a school for mediums here in Spokane, and all sorts of aspects of mourning, clothing and paraphernalia and things like that.
Yeah, I think this. How? Remind me, you are a curator, and you're still a curator, but before this position, you've been a curator of collections for many, many years, correct?
Actually, I have more of my background in exhibition curation and just museum administration. Okay. And so coming and joining the MAC was a chance to, I think, meld those two together and come up with some new ways to engage with the Campbell House specifically. Was one of the big lures for bringing me out here to Spokane, for sure.
The reason why I asked that question is that I think that all of us who like museums, in a one way or another, even if it's through administration, and you were a museum director right away, but anyway, before all those positions, that you still have this organic kind of in you to appreciate objects, to be that curator, to be detective, to like, whoa, the fascination of different stories that you hear. And I think that organically, all of us that work in museums and like museums, kind of like that, it's just attracted to those. And so part of collections, you're right, there's, typically it's stated, I'm not saying that's accurate, but it's stated around museums that we only show around 30% of our collections, and then 70% is in storage. And so when we have that percentage, obviously it's going to be a lot of objects that's like, unless it's a very specific exhibit or program, you don't bring out. And so I'm glad that that you were able to bring out those objects that just enriches the context, and it allows that those, I mean, you're preserving those objects for a reason. And so once in a while, we need to shut them off. It's like, yeah, we got this really weird, unique type of item that I think, even if it's for a short term, to just, let people see it. And so now going to actually more about the conversation about our experiences in this topic in the museum field is now that we have now that we already covered a little bit more about the project that we were working on, it's like, okay, collections, stories, mediums, ghosts, believe it or not. What I like about your project specifically is how in the presentation, you were providing the background that you were able to correct a lot of those stories that it was not correctly been displayed, that they were actually confusing people, that the information was not accurate enough, that it created things that was not real. And so the idea of creating something like this allows you to like, no, this is your official story. This is what happened. You are creating people that never existed. And so that's what I like about your project a lot, is the opportunity to clarify and to bring that. Is anything else that you would like to add on that one? Like your experiences with the public and clarifying their versions versus what you have in your collections?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about the story that inspired actually this whole conversation in the first place. Campbell House, for I'd say about the last decade, if you start to notice different online websites and sources that are documenting it as one of the most haunted places in Washington State, which I have to admit really came as a surprise to me. I joined the staff here in 2019, and I thought, okay, well, this is interesting. Let's see what they're saying. And it was just very interesting to see how the story of the hauntings, it was actually connected to a series of supposed murders that had taken place in the house. But while the story had really spread rapidly over the past decade or so, it really doesn't line up with, many, if any, of the facts about the house itself. So that was one of the first clues to say, hey, well, there's an aspect of myth making happening here. But, from our perspective as being, the caretakers of the physical structure and documenting its history, like, what should we be looking at? Not that we're always going to be the, absolute authority on every story around Campbell House, but this is the reason that I personally love stories or topics like Bigfoot, right? These are, forays in kind of the unknown, mysteries, where certainty really isn't the end game. The conversations, I think, are more important, and the investigation is more important ultimately than coming up with I'm never going to be able to say, yes, there are ghosts in Campbell House, or no, there are not. I don't feel like that's, I don't feel like, one, that's my place, and I really don't feel qualified to ever say that for sure one way or the other. But yeah, it's again, that murder story was something that just didn't jive with what we knew about the home and the family and the series of events connected to the space. So this was an opportunity to look and say, okay, here's what we know, and then going forward, what aspects of the paranormal are something that people might still be able to engage with the house, and just continue to be open to learning more about it, just communicating with folks in our community who are interested in that topic.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I don't think none of us can, even the people who go after them can actually claim that they know for sure ghosts exist or not. There's last year we have a ghost hunter investigation taking place at the museum, and even themselves cannot say we believe or not, because the investigation is based on equipment, is based on data, is based no interpretations, but most like, okay, what can we do to prove it? And so that is one of those elements like Bigfoot. You had to prove it to believe it. It is kind of the same thing. And which, by the way, we'll be having a Bigfoot exhibit and the beginning of the next year. And so that should be interesting to, again, bring one of those topics that you believe or not. And is, are we making the statement that it is real? No. What we're doing is providing like a buffet table. We're providing a dish for people to interpret that information. And it's up to them whether they say it's a good meal, it's not a good meal, I don't like it, yes, it's great or not. But it's an invitation for everyone to have those dialogues. I believe that, I don't know, we will be having a ghostology lecture tonight. And I know that this interview will come up a lot later than was stated today, but the idea of bringing someone to talk about this topic, in the beginning, I was nervous, like, am I compromising the integrity of the museum by bringing something that is not, that we cannot prove if it's true or not? What about reputation? What about of how, best practices in museums? How do we, I don't see that often. All museums having fun like that. It's like, let's just go for it and play with this. And I'm not saying that we're worrying, we are fun, but there's some areas that it's just, we just don't go as often. And I love that we are not making the statements, it's true or not. I like the idea of serving a different demographic, serving a different side of our history. You have artifacts in your collection, so it's already, whether or not it's true, whether or not people believe on them, it manifests in every day, it manifests in history and present, and I can see that happen in the future. And so us being a space that provides those dialogues, and I love how you use that term, the dialogue on experiencing a program or a conversation, or looking at an artifact. And that's something that I appreciate your conversation so much. To have the permission to, I'm not saying to confirm or not, but to even address it, like, hey, this is a weird topic. What do you think about it? And in the museum field, Washington State is pretty cool. I love the state. I love the unique stories that it comes out of it. But yeah, I just, I'm very thankful for the opportunity to talk to you about this interesting one. Have you, and I know that we had that conversation last time, do you know of other museums that have tapped into something like this? I know there's another institution, and I forgot the name of it.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, one I really wanted to mention today that specifically inspired us, as we were working on this dark history program, was the Fort Nisqually, and doing their kind of historic interpretations of seances. That was something that our staff and our volunteers really cued into and said, "Oh, okay, let's take a look at what they're doing over there." And while interpreting seances wasn't necessarily a good fit for us, because we could never say for with any certainty that the Campbell family was any practicing in spiritualism or anything adjacent to it. It was still a good example.
Yeah, they are. I don't know. One of the conversations that took place after us did this, the reason why we did it in the first place, I always felt something. I'm not saying I believe them or not. I'm waving my white flag. I'm not choosing a side, so no, I'm not making any statements in here. I don't believe or not. All I'm saying is that we had people experiencing things in the museum, and it was brought to our attention. Are you even going to say something? And the only reason why is there's not one or two or three, but all volunteers, without us telling them anything, and individually coming, I had this experience. Is that normal here? Yeah, it is normal. Yes, that's common. Yes, that's happening. And so we brought in the team, and then they talked to our volunteers and really start capturing the essence of their experiences. And then after that, they came here. It was, I think, 7 people in that team, everyone with equipment, and everyone came from the angle of let's cover first everything, like making sure there was no electrical issues or venting issues or the climate or how close we were to a lake or things like that. So they were ruling out everything. That was the process. It was just ruling out any possible. I mean, they studied the building. They checked where were, all the sources of electrical power were. And I mean, they were really going into it. And we do have a video that shows that almost half of that video in the beginning is all about everything that they did to prove that nothing exists here. So that was the focus, to prove that nothing exists here. What happens where things are not explainable? And so when we were hitting into those topics, we were just saying, this is something that we need to continue to research. That was our approach. Like, we need to research that more than us making a statement. When we mentioned that we were doing this, a huge volume of people were telling me stories and commenting and being intrigued. They want to be part of the investigation and were curious. And I saw how fascinating this topic it is, and how we can even connect, as any topic in that we can provide at the museums. There's topics that unify people. And I believe that sharing a scary moment for some people might unify them because they don't feel alone in the process. And so that's one of the reasons why we did it. Another one is just addressing a topic that is so well known, but so fuzzy, so it's like in this gray area. It's like it's not clear.
Ultimately, usually experienced on that individual level too. These are very singular experiences for most people. We found that just the topic itself was enough to bring in a lot of visitors to the museum who'd never been to Campbell House before, maybe had never been to the museum campus in general. And we're seeing the same effect with the new program for 2023, and it's centered on secret societies. So we're looking at stories of all the different fraternal organizations and kind of the adjacent organizations, histories of those here in Spokane. And I think it's a little bit different, of course, a little bit different topic focus, but I think it's also that there's some secrecy and there's some unknown aspect to that. And that's really what unifies it and why we've continued to use the descriptive dark history to explain, something that we're really just shedding light on these topics that are maybe under examined or a little bit outside of the scope of what we normally focus on here at the museum.
That dark history is a new term for me, and I don't know if it's because of my English or whatever. I'm still learning every single day, but dark history, is this something that is commonly used in pop culture, or is it something that you came up as a museum internally?
We I have to admit, I spent a lot of time kind of just perusing the internet to see if I could see where some of the inspiration for things like dark history were coming from. And I saw a lot, particularly over the pandemic, associated with the dark academic aesthetic. Is that something you're familiar with?
No.
It's kind of the, imagine you're a student at Hogwarts and you've kind of got that old Gothic style aesthetic, with the dark wood and books and, the mysterious, all the trappings that go along with that. And I believe that there were a couple of podcasts that actually used the specific phrase dark history in them. And a lot of those were also looking at the paranormal. So while we're using it, I think a little bit differently than maybe some other, podcasters or folks in the pop culture areas are, I think it still has some, connection to that. So, we're trying to, ironically keep it a little bit light. This is not meant to be really one of the things we always made sure, especially in those first couple of tours, is make sure people knew that, we're not going to scare you. Come on in, like there's really nothing to be afraid of here in Campbell House. We're all going to be here together. And so I think, trying to define that is probably going to be a little bit of an ongoing project. For sure. We definitely had to consider that as we rebooted the program this last year. But yeah, I'm glad you brought up the title.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to see if it's something I can use too, like dark history. Can we say, hey, it's a dark history project, and there's all kinds of things that we will be showing in.
Absolutely.
But then, it was interesting. Part of the so there's three things I would like to tap into. Number one is the definition of paranormal. What is that to you? But we'll get there in a second. And then two, dark history. And then the third one that I'm going to be tapping into, energies. During the investigation, there was some unexplainable things, but part of the investigation is that some of the equipment were reacting to very specific objects at the museum. There's specifically one at the lobby. We have a bench that used to be a principal's bench. So anyone who got into trouble, the kids would be right there. And so that was a principal bench for many, many years. And then we have another one, a 20th century elementary school desk that said, I'm actually looking at it from here. It said around 6 kids in that desk, with tiny little ones. We're talking probably first grade or even kindergarten. And then the third one was my desk, and so like my office. And so the one at the front desk and the lobby is a bench. I just can imagine the volume of people just having the anxiety and fear and just sweating in that chair. So no one or two or three, but anyone that's sitting there, it was kind of almost like impregnating that energy into the object. And then the little ones, the one solid desk, they have 6 cubicles on it. I mean, if any of you had a work or have a little 3-year-old kid, or 2-year-old kid, how they are just all over the place. I can imagine 6 5-year-old kids sitting on the same place for more than an hour and not having to have an issue with each other. I just cannot imagine. I can see them pinching and bothering and knocking and crying and yelling and all of it. And then my desk, it's no calm and relaxed. It's not like, oh, everything is easy, everything is sweet. No, I have a lot of emotions, all the way from frustration to scare. Oh yeah, I get scared a lot. I had to pay bills. That scares me like crazy, way more than ghost. And then, so one of the questions that I had with the investigators was, how much is truly, a paranormal thing, or maybe energy? Like I associated those 3 objects fully charged of someone, and I haven't died yet, and so I know it's not bad somebody passed away or anything like that. It's me just releasing a bunch of crazy energies into one object. And so, when you think about the term paranormal, what is paranormal to you? To me, it's very confusing, because when I see of energy, like I see this part of us. You go to a space and you can feel when there's a lot of fights that took place in that space. So, this is so calm and relaxing. I like it. Or somebody, this is fun. I want to do something fun with it. So to you, and not representing, we can do that disclaimer here. We are not representing our institutions at this second. We are humans too. And so what it means how do you interpret that term paranormal? And then something that is just an everyday thing like energies.
Yeah. For me personally, I like to look at the concept of the paranormal, or just how this ties into the way that as a museum professional, I work with material culture. It's like what you were mentioning. Looking at the emotions and experiences of individual people as they've engaged with something like that principal's bench. Those are stories that can be really difficult to find, but they're very powerful. And I think that is one of the actually fully believe that is Campbell House and other historic houses like it, that's its superpower. It has the ability to, you literally walk into this space and it's like a time machine. And of course, most historic houses can do this. But Campbell House is really, I think, because of the depth of the stories and what we know about the house and documented and the objects that belong to the family and just how well it's been restored, it really has a fantastic ability to actually put you in that space where we can now say, imagine what it was like to be, the family's daughter, Helen Campbell. And we find out that she had a pet cemetery in the backyard, and that the family held their family funerals there in the home, funeral ceremonies, and to be able to put yourself in that place in that time and imagine what it would have felt like for you, I think is again, that's its greatest power. So objects, I believe, also have that ability. I'd say that's the thing that I find really fascinating about it. And it's just a different way of looking at material culture in general.
Yeah. To me, museums are so fascinating in general. I mean, any object, there's so many different ways that you can look at it, all of it from who owned it to what was happening in that time frame period, to how. To me, I use the term of empathy and also making that connection of placing yourself in the other person's shoes and going through that. And so, it's just been fascinating. We almost on the end of our interview, and so I just want to also give you an opportunity to vocalize any thoughts or any last thing that you would like to share with everyone.
Yeah, I think just to close up the what we've been talking about. That idea of the material culture related to the paranormal, and that the idea of empathy, that really connects with that original conversation that Amanda Paulson and I had back in 2020, and when we were speculating about what life was going to be like after the pandemic, and were we going to see anything, as far as a resurgence of American spiritualism, the way that happened after the flu epidemic back in beginning of the 20th century. And while I think those questions are still in the air and we don't really know, I think that there's a lot more room for looking at empathy and emotions as being part of that historical package that we're seeking to interpret. So that I'd say is probably at the core of a lot of what the Dark History program embodies. And I did want to share, if anybody is interested in looking at the other work that Amanda is doing, you can find her at Pretty Effin' Spooky. So that's Pretty FN spooky.com, and that's also her handle on other platforms like Instagram, and pretty fun. Go check her out, see what she's up to, and of course looking at what's coming up here at the Northwest Museum. You can find us at northwestmuseum.org.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any cool exhibits that you are displaying right now?
Oh, well, we actually have a current pop culture hit with the large Minecraft show on view that's going to be up through December, and so I think that's really fun, looking at how we're building our our kind of our pop culture history of the future right now through something like the Minecraft exhibit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's something that I've been working on it too, on inclusion. To me, it's not just racial inclusion. It's not just gender or age or disabilities or anything that represents us individually, but also the sense of, it's like a potluck or buffet. You cannot just keep serving it for, just vegetarians or just meat eaters, or like in general, lactose free. And so you had to offer a little bit of everything so everyone feels included in the party. And so that's when I think of it like exhibits and pop culture elements, I just think of it like another dish. And so anyone who cannot relate to anything else that we are doing, they can find something that, so they are not feeling excluded and they don't feel, well, I don't connect. I'm just, I just came from another part of the country or from a different country, came to the area, and I'm not from there. I'm not from here. I don't know about the history. I'm learning, but I don't have the connection. Or, we have or different projects that if people don't connect to specific things, I mean, we can offer the element of pop culture. We did a Beatles exhibit during the summer. That was cool to see how people were just reacting to it. We will be having a Bigfoot exhibit in the beginning of the year. And then just the programs we just did with the community. We are not taking credit that we are the ones doing it. Like we're part of the community doing this. A UFO festival. And it's just been great. It's just been great to be able to. Oh my God!
I'm going to show you this just before we sign off.
Oh my goodness! Look at that.
This is my plaster cast of one of this is a Walla Walla area Bigfoot plaster cast that I picked up at a lecture a couple of years ago. So I always like to keep that here at my office just as a reminder of why I love this field and why I love doing why I love museums in general. And this is just a perfect symbol of it.
No, yeah, there was one time I went to the Washington State Historical Society, and I never experienced a hit blockbuster exhibit, and I think it was more of an event because I remember having beer drinking around. So it was an event, but it was many years ago, and it was lines to get in outside the parking lot, and I was like, oh my goodness, I've never seen people lining up. Well, unless it's like those huge mega big museums, but like in Washington State, I haven't seen it like that. I mean, it's been rarely like those really blockbuster ones. But I was like, Bigfoot, and once again, it's one of those topics that scratches my head. Like, are there any best practices? Are any rules about it? And it's all about us, how we interpret our own local history and how we present what is in our community and what the people are asking of us too, because a lot of this has been me. It was not me just alone. And hey, I'm going to do this. It's like, can we do this? And what are my arguments in saying no, only because that's not normal, that's not common? I don't know. But yeah, pop culture, I do believe that that's part of our history, is a way that represents on one side of humanity. And so I'm glad that we are having fun and that we can show the fun. And so I do hope that people come up before it goes away, your Minecraft exhibit, and that check you out and check Amanda too. I hope I get to interview her. I just need a little bit more time, but yes, I would like to do that. And once again, thank you. Thank you so much for allowing us to interview you and share, to get to know you a little bit more and share that, this really intriguing topic and making sure that we are having that disclaimer. We are not saying that we believe in anything, but we're just saying that this is something that it's taking place in our communities. And it's just, how do we have those dialogues for us to move forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. No, I'm always happy to have museum conversations. So thank you so much for the invitation.
No, I'm glad. Well, thank you, everyone. And I hope that we get to see, I hope that you get curious about the museum and just check out the programs. And I will hope to see you. No, I hope to have you back again here. So thank you. Bye.
Our Highline Voices, 106.5 KQWZ LP FM.
We envision ourselves sitting at a round table where no one is the leader and stories are heard respectfully, regardless of gender, age, sexual orientation, disabilities, or ethnicity. We want to embrace our differences and similarities. We are creating a place where visitors can connect with the stories and each other. Our mission is, we collect, preserve, and tell the stories of the Highline region and its people. We want to extend our mission outside the walls of the museum. Our Highline Voices represents us all, honoring our past, celebrating our present, and uniting to cultivate our future. This project allows us to reach out to demographics who might be unable to visit the museum. People with disabilities, low-income families, people who don't trust museums, and more. In partnership, we are launching a locally programmed new radio station at the museum, featuring recorded and live Highline's heritage, history, culture, arts, and more. Are you interested in sharing your story? Email director@highlinemuseum.org.